Have you ever had the feeling that no matter how hard you try, you're always stuck in the same place, as if something invisible were blocking your path? It's frustrating, isn't it? What few people know is that often the biggest obstacle we face isn't external. It's inside us, and worse, it operates without us realizing it. That's the mistake that's holding you back in everything. Today we're going to explore this hidden mistake that, without knowing it, you may be making every day. Life is full of challenges, and we all deal with difficulties at some point. Maybe it's at work, in your studies, in your relationships, or even in your personal projects. And when things don't go well, the first natural reaction is to look for something or someone to blame. My boss is the problem. I don't have enough time. People don't understand me. But what if I told you that often the problem lies in a belief you didn't even know you had? Something that is holding you down like an anchor? This belief is so sneaky that it blends in with your day-to-day life. It hides in your excuses, your fears, and your procrastination. That's why it's almost impossible to recognize at first glance. It makes you believe that in order to succeed or get ahead, you need the perfect circumstances, the right moment, the right person, the right environment. The truth? This perfectionism, this search for the ideal scenario, is what is paralyzing you and holding back your dreams. Imagine for a moment that your life is like driving a car. You're behind the wheel, you've got the road in front of you, but without realizing it, you've left the handbrake on. You can hit the gas as hard as you like, but the car is going nowhere, and you start to think, is the car faulty? Is the fuel running out? Or is the road too steep? But in reality, what's holding you back is something your self-control, and it's right at your fingertips. And that's the perfect analogy for the mistake that's holding you back. The mental handbrake. It's stuck, but you don't realize it. What makes this happen? Little beliefs that have been planted in your mind throughout your life. It could be an idea that you're not good enough, or that it's not the right time. These beliefs act as a silent block, preventing you from taking action, from taking risks, from moving forward. And you get frustrated because you feel like you're trying hard, but you never seem to get anywhere. Have you ever found yourself procrastinating on something you knew needed to be done? Maybe it was a project at work, an important decision, or even a change in your personal life. And instead of taking action, you put it off. I'll do it tomorrow, you tell yourself. When things settle down, I'll sort it out. But time passes, and that tomorrow never comes. This behavior is the mental handbrake in action. And it has a cause. Fear. Fear of failure. Fear of not being prepared. Fear of what others will think. This fear traps us in a comfort zone. A zone that is actually not comfortable at all. You know you're dissatisfied, that you could be doing more, but you remain paralyzed. That's because taking action means facing the unknown, dealing with uncertainty. And the human brain hates uncertainty. It prefers the familiar, even if the familiar is holding you back. So you get stuck in a cycle of stagnation, always waiting for the ideal moment, without realizing that it will never come. Now you may be asking yourself, but what if I'm really not ready? What if it's not the right time? This is the central conflict, the belief that we need to be perfect in order to act, that everything needs to be in place for us to take the next step. But this belief is a trap. It makes us postpone decisions and wait for something that doesn't exist. The mistake that is holding you back is waiting for the perfect moment. And while you wait, life goes on, opportunities pass by, and you remain in the same place. You don't need ideal conditions to start. In fact, it's the act of starting, even in the midst of imperfection, that prepares you. The real cause of your delay is not a lack of preparation, but a lack of action. So what is the handbrake you need to release today? What's the action you're putting off because you believe you're not ready yet? It's time to confront this belief and realize that what's holding you back is not the world, but yourself. Now that you have this scenario in your head, let's stop and think for a moment. How many times throughout your life have you found yourself repeating behaviors that seem automatic? Have you ever thought that sometimes the mistake that keeps holding you back isn't something you're doing wrong, but something you don't even realize you're doing. That's the crux of the problem. We often think that the reason things aren't working is an external factor, something that comes from outside, the economy, lack of luck, circumstances. But what if, in fact, the biggest obstacle to your success lies in something you've never stopped to question? Let me tell you something you may never have stopped to think about. What could be holding you back is the way you respond to difficulties. We grow up believing that our reactions are automatic, that it's just who we are. But what if that's only part of the story? Perhaps deep down, the mistake isn't even how you're acting, but why. What motivates your decisions? Have you ever stopped to think about what is really driving you? If the answer is no, then perhaps it's time to stop and think about it. And herein lies the great dilemma. Most of us spend our entire lives chasing external solutions, a promotion at work, a better relationship, or even a move to another city. But what if what's really holding us back is our mindset? Let's bring that into something more tangible. Think about it. How many times have you committed to a goal, but deep down you were already preparing to fail? That inner voice that says, "This will never work," or "I've never been good at this." That's the real mistake that's holding you back, and you don't even know it. This cycle of negative thinking, this lack of confidence, it shapes the way you face life. And this is where we often get lost because we don't always realize that we're sabotaging our own path. What happens when you go into a situation believing that you won't succeed? Your body reacts, your mind reacts. Your brain, which should be your greatest ally, becomes your biggest obstacle. Think of the times you've gone into a meeting, a presentation, or even a new challenge afraid of failing. That silent fear shapes your actions. You end up making decisions that sabotage your chances of success and you don't even realize it. Let's be honest, your mind can be your biggest enemy if you let it. The big question here is, how do we change this cycle? How do we stop being our own obstacle? Because the point is this, the problem isn't that you're not trying. The problem is how you're trying, and above all, how you see yourself within that attempt. If you go into a situation already believing that you won't succeed or that failure is inevitable, guess what? You act as if the outcome has already been decided. You give up before you even try. And the craziest thing about it all is that you often don't even realize you're doing it. What's holding you back isn't a lack of effort or talent, it's the way you see yourself. And this may be happening in areas of your life that you didn't even realize. You may be sabotaging yourself at work, in your relationships, in your health, without even realizing it. Now, I know that this can be difficult to accept at first. It's uncomfortable to think that we are somehow responsible for our own failures. But I'm not saying this to discourage you. On the contrary, the idea here is to make you realize that if you are in control of that mistake, then you too can change the course of things. That's the key. If you allow yourself to question those deep-rooted beliefs, the ones that tell you that you're not good enough or that you won't succeed, then you start to take control of your life. Change begins in the mind. Think with me. If every time you face a difficulty, your reaction is automatically to give up or see yourself as a failure, how do you expect to move forward? The way you react to challenges is the basis for your progress. Perhaps you're asking yourself, okay, but how do I change that in practice? And this is where you need to understand the true power of the growth mindset. This concept, much studied by psychologists such as Carol Dweck, proposes that instead of seeing your talents and abilities as something fixed, you start to see each challenge as an opportunity for growth. Instead of thinking, I can't do this, you start asking yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? This small change in perspective makes all the difference, because it shifts the focus from failure to progress. And that's when you start to break the cycle that's holding you back. That's the central point. The mistake that's holding you back is the belief that you're stuck, that your capabilities are limited. But the truth is that you can grow, you can improve, and every obstacle can be an opportunity to do so, if you choose to see it that way. Now, I know that changing this mindset doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. But the first step is to recognize that you are often trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage, and to start observing your own thoughts. The next time you find yourself thinking that something is impossible or that you won't succeed, stop and ask yourself, is that true? Or is that just my fear talking? This simple reflection can begin to open up space for a new way of thinking, and over time you'll realize that that error that was holding you back, that seemed so big and insurmountable, begins to lose strength. And that's when you start to take charge of your own life. Now that you have a clear understanding of how your thoughts might be holding you back, the next question is, what do you do with this information? How do you turn this understanding into something practical, something that really helps you get out of this cycle? The answer is intentional action. Once you've identified the thoughts that are holding you back, the ones that make you believe you're not good enough or that failure is inevitable, you start to replace those thoughts with actions that take you in the opposite direction. For example, let's say you're afraid of failing at an important presentation at work. Your mistake would be to believe that this fear defines your ability. But instead of surrendering to the fear, you can turn it into a reason to prepare even more. Intentional action would be to study, practice, seek feedback. By doing this, you begin to see fear not as an enemy, but as a sign that you need to prepare better. This process of transformation takes practice. You'll fail a few times along the way, and that's okay. Because what really matters here is progress, not perfection. Every time you choose not to let yourself be dominated by fear or doubt, you are taking a step towards a stronger, more confident version of yourself. And remember, the mistake that slows you down the most is the fear of making mistakes. Irony, isn't it? You're so afraid of failing that you end up avoiding trying, and this stops you from growing. But when you start to change your perspective, when you allow yourself to see mistakes as part of the process, you start to unleash your true potential. So what does all this leave us with? That the mistake that holds you back the most is not a lack of skill or opportunity, but the belief that you are incapable of changing. The good news is that you can change. You have the power to transform the way you see your challenges, and with that, change the way you face life. The key is simple but powerful. Instead of seeing your mistakes as the end of the line, see them as part of the journey. When you change your mindset to one of growth, you realize that every stumble is actually an opportunity to learn, improve, and move forward. And in doing so, you begin to realize that there's nothing more powerful than someone who isn't afraid of making mistakes. Now that you've understood how the fear of making mistakes can be holding you back, it's time to put it into practice. If you want to continue on this journey of growth and self-discovery, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this message with anyone you think could also benefit. Leave your comment below. What's the biggest obstacle you've faced? Let's grow together and turn our challenges into strength.